He landed it. But Gilbert, he didn't throw enough punches. Why?
Well, easier said than done against a guy like Anderson Silva, who's coming with kicks and coming with straight punches as well. And again, you don't want to compromise your form for the judges or go for it and get knocked down in those positions. I thought he did a great job, and he did some good flurries, and he was trying to pick a fight, and that's what he was doing. Anderson had a lot of footwork. Nick Diaz took the center of the octagon and walked him down. I think Anderson Silva was backing up more. Do you agree?
I thought that Nick was standing his ground or Nick was backing up. He had some lateral movement. I didn't think he came forward enough. But, Max, I will concede when he did come forward, Nick had some success, but not overall enough to win the round.
Just had to do a little bit more. Well, let's talk about Silva. What did you see from him? I'll start with you, Chael, because you were in the octagon with him. Pre-injury, and how different was he tonight, the way you saw Silva?
Okay, this was inspiring, guys. Look, nobody comes back from an injury. Nobody comes back from a layoff and physically looks better. Generally, mentally, they're even different. This was the first time in 5 years, guys, I've seen Anderson Silva fight with his hands up and his chin down. He followed the basics. He respected Nick Diaz's power a lot. He felt the power, but he was ready to absorb it, unlike he was with Chris Weidman, because he was in bad position.
Very emotional night for Anderson Silva after the fight. Gilbert, obviously you were ringside and you saw it. Did he leave a little on the table? He's obviously going to want a title shot here, but do you think he needs some more work before he gets into in a bigger fight, obviously with Chris Weidman or someone of that nature?
Well, Anderson Silva did a great job tonight against a tough Nick Diaz, and I thought he did show a lot more discipline. He wasn't shaking his head. He wasn't taunting as much. He did have a disciplined stance and did a great job. And again, he struck with one of the best strikers, and it was a great striking battle. And yes, I think he's ready for another title shot.
Does he get it right away? Because I think some people will say he looked good. I thought you were, as you said, it was inspiring. But does it look like he needs to get a few more kinks out here before he gets up against a guy like Weidman, who is one of the best pound-for-pound fighters in the world?
Well, fellas, let's be real objective here. First off, Anderson Silva is going on 40 years old, so he has no time to work the kinks out. On the other side of things, he may be the next best middleweight out there. I think that Machida's got an argument for it, of course, Vitor Belfort, but Anderson Silva's had success with those guys. I will say this. The gap between Chris Weidman and Anderson Silva is insurmountable. It is the Weidman era. Does that mean we're not going to see part 3? We'll have to ask Dana White.
Is the fear still there? Because Nick Diaz thought he won the fight, but usually when these guys get in there, there's that fear that we saw with guys like Mike Tyson when he was in his prime. Didn't seem to be there for Diaz.
Yeah, he was overwhelming. Anderson Silva, after the show, you can see he broke down in tears, and it was a big accomplishment for him. I think he shook out the cobwebs. I think that was a good fight for him to get back in there, and he really got challenged by Nick Diaz. I thought it was an amazing fight for a 70-pounder to challenge the 85-pound greatest of all time. But yes, Anderson Silva looks back, and that's a great first fight back for him, and I would love to see what's next.
The theatrics are a big story here. In the first round, it was very civil between these two coming up, but then the jawing started from Diaz, turned his back to him a couple times, and the best of the fight, he actually lied down.
Like he was taking a nap.
Like he was taking a nap while Silva was going there. You were there.
I loved it.
Was this something prepared?
Well, what I'm seeing is Nick's trying to hold the center of the octagon, and he wants to fight. And I think in the first round, he had him standing toe-to-toe. And those were the best moments for Nick Diaz, but there is a lot of footwork, and I think a very good job by Anderson Silva picking him apart, but I thought he was circling and had a lot of footwork, and from what I saw, Nick Diaz had his feet planted and was trying to follow, but it's tough to engage against Anderson Silva. Yes, Nick could have put the pressure a little better, but when you see these long arms coming at you, these big kicks, you got to make the right decision, and you can't compromise your chin and your form just to try to make everyone happy. So I think he did a great job.
You enjoyed that.
I think that we need to make a gentleman's agreement. I promise to go home and rewatch this fight. If you promise the same thing, because I just feel like we saw something different. Listen, Nick Diaz is a worthy opponent. He was in great shape. He gave up some size, and he went out there and stood his ground with a multiple-time world champion. However, he got beat in this fight. His leg kicks were weak at best. They were slow at best. His hands looked very good, but he wasn't active enough. I'm being a little critical of Nick Diaz, but that's because I had high hopes for Nick Diaz. I still believe Nick has the skill set needed to beat someone like Anderson Silva. But if you don't bring your tools to the job site, you can't build a house, Max.
No, you can't. Well, we'll agree to disagree here. A combined 35-month layoff for the two fighters, so there was going to be some rust there. We saw it at times. And guys, to answer your question, it's not a fight for the time capsule, but I think the folks here in Las Vegas will remember UFC 183 and its main event. Back to you guys in Arizona.
All right, Max, thank you. It sounds like Anderson Silva did enough of what he had to do.
Right.
People didn't think he was going to come back. If he did come back, what would he look like? That devastating leg injury does enough. Gets unanimous decision.
No top 10 moments in that fight, but plenty of top 10 moments, including from
But we begin with UFC 183. Anderson Silva back from injury, taking on Nick Diaz, and we go to nearby Las Vegas.
Yeah.
And join Max Bretas and company. Max, take it away.
Yeah, Steve, we're close enough. Jump in the rental car, come in here. We'll be here all night, wrapping up UFC 183 with Chael Sonnen and Gilbert Melendez. Well, we're going to start and give you the highlight of what we have seen on this evening. Anderson Silva winning by unanimous decision over Nick Diaz. It was very civil in the build-up, but then in the first round, the jawing started, the feigning, and then Diaz even lied down in front of Silva. But then the striker making contact. It was upright throughout, but Silva, significant strikes started to land. He cut up around Diaz's left eye, and he would win by unanimous decision. His opponent, Nick Diaz, had a different opinion.
Did you feel at the end of the fight that you had won?
I felt like I won every round. Every round I come forward. Nick is the best. I stay here for a long time. It's the first time in my life when I fight for the guy strong, the mentally strong, punch is strong, the kicks is strong. Thank you, Nick. Thanks for the opportunity.
Nice Sean Shirk drop. We're Chael Sonnen, who has been in the octagon on 2 occasions with Anderson Silva. Gilbert Melendez, who's good friends with Nick Diaz, was in his corner today. He thought he won every round. How did you see it, Kate's side?
Well, I don't think that Anderson Silva won every round like two of those judges thought. I thought those rounds were close and competitive. Yes, Anderson scored a lot of points, but in these exchanges I've seen in the highlights, I felt like it was very competitive. And Nick Diaz was trying to walk him down and try to get a fight going, but it's really hard to close the distance on someone like Anderson Silva, who did hit Nick Diaz hard, who did kick him hard. It's not easy to commit and just walk forward against someone like that.
Well, guys, I'll agree that it was competitive. I just want to make sure that we can stipulate to the fact that it was also very decisive. Anderson Silva, if you want to compare this to the old high school prom, he led the dance. Nick Diaz was a step behind, and he didn't need to be, guys. The moments that he did have success in this fight, he just needed more of them, and I felt like he was a little bit too reserved. And for the guy that's known for his conditioning, there was no reason for that.
It seemed like he unhinged Silva in that first round with some of the taunting that we saw, but in the end, constant barrage of pressure from Silva got through. But let's talk about Anderson Silva in the octagon for the first time in 13 months, shattered his leg. It was an injury that many people thought he would never recover. How did he look to you?
I thought he looked great. Very disciplined stance. A different Anderson Silva. He was very disciplined out there. Landed some good shots. In great shape. A very tough fight against Nick Diaz. And, you know, after he won the fight and, you know, he collapsed to the ground, very emotional out there. It looked like he overcame some adversity, and it was an impressive performance.
If he loses this fight, the talk of retirement comes into view for a guy who's 39 years of age. He wins it. Maybe it wasn't vintage Silva where he knocks his opponent out, but do you think he's ready to continue his UFC career and towards that title again?
And I'll tell you what, Max, he did enough that he needed to do. And Gilbert, as you know, there's an expression in fighting. I'm going to look great next time, but I'm just going to win this one. So I think what he did, all that he needed to do, Dana White has said if he had success tonight, he would become a #1 contender. Let's not forget, he did fight a guy that was also coming off a layoff, but the guy was a 2-time world champion. Anderson came out, he kept his hands up, his chin down, he had really basic and really clean Muay Thai. I thought that was impressive for a guy 39 years of age.
Okay, we'll see with Anderson Silva. He's obviously going to want to get a rematch for the third time with Chris Weidman for the strap at the middleweight division. We'll get it back to you, and we'll be covering it all night here on SportsCenter.
Twice before have Duke and Virginia met in a top 10 matchup. Saturday night, the first time ever at a top 5 showdown. 4th-ranked Blue Devils visiting